All right, now as we talk about our stunts, one of the important things to understand with our stunts is that we're going to run some of them versus run game when we think we're going to get that. We're going to run some versus pass game. We'll do a lot of them, but the main goal of this is this. We don't often move our DNs out of alignment because we want to keep those ends or the edges of our defense a little bit more solidified for our linebackers so they can fit correctly. Typically, when we do this, there's one thing to understand. If we don't call a stunt, you're playing hands-on, you're playing in that gap, you're not penetrating, you're just sitting there, right? If we call a stunt, now you're pushing through, get to the heel line of the D-line, bend and run. And so what happens is one of the great debates between D-line is whether you play gap sound and read the block and sit, or whether you push through and run upfield and try to cause chaos. And so what we want to do is we want to actually have a combination of both. So if we don't call you on a stunt, you're responsible to be in that gap, hands on the old lineman, sit with him, read his block, defeat his block, and then make a play. With stunts, we're sending you as guided missiles. We're sending you through a gap, a specific gap that we've called. The reason you have to get through that gap is now the linebacker knows he has the opposite gap, and that once you shoot through, you're not just running upfield like an idiot. You're going to hit the heel line of the offensive line, and then you're going to bend flat and chase down the ball. So like our blitzes, our D-line stunts direct you to execute a call. It's not something you do on your own. It's something you do when you're told, because if you go to a gap that you're not supposed to, the linebacker can't fit in. So we will designate strong or weak side with the call. So if we were to say a sample call would be 31 axe strong, which means the strong side D-end is going to the A gap. And so there's key terms in here, and you can see they're underlined. When it says axe, that means somebody's going to the A gap. When it says B, that means somebody's going to the B gap, but that's for the DTs. So the reality is if you're an interior lineman, you only got to know a couple words, and they're all cued like that. So now let's take a solid look at what we have. These are most of the stunts that we'll use in run downs when we think we're going to get run game, and I've got them split into three groups. DT moves, DT and end moves, and then just end moves. So like we mentioned, axe, this is 31 axe strong. As you guys can see, as I would signal that, I would signal it in exactly that format, axe strong. So if you're the nose, you know you always line up on the strong side. That means I'm telling you axe. Now, I have it shown from a 3 technique because we'll do a lot of stuff like that, but that doesn't mean I can't call 11 axe strong. Even though you're already going to be in that gap, you now are going to attack that gap differently. Instead of putting hands on the guard and trying to sit in the gap and read the block and defeat the block, you're shooting through the gap and bending to make a play as best you can. The second one for D lineman, the single one, is bull. So this one is shown as 31 bull weak. That would be us crossing. Now, when we signal both DNs and DTs, we have a couple of them. Slant, which takes us to the strength, and angle, which takes us away. Now, finally, with the ends, since you're in that outer gap anyways, you more have a contain role on that. So now what we have is break, and what I've got shown is break weak. This is probably the most common one we'll call, and we will call it all the time, is to just shoot through that gap and see if you can make a play, especially with what we expect our bandits to do. Now we look at the rushes that we use with pass rush. Now a couple of these are going to be a little different because we do have some expectations when we have a pass game. See, if it's run game, you may have to fit a gap that could be hit immediately. In pass game, third and long, situations where we know the offense is going to throw, we have a little bit more time to get you guys open and get after the quarterback. So when we see some of these twist game stuff, there's going to be a little bit different things to it. So now as we talk about our pass stunts, the pass stunts are just a little bit different in the sense that we're going to call these when we have time and are trying to get pressure on the quarterback. Now, not all of these will be 100% pass stunts, but these are primarily ones that we want to use in those situations. So the first one is twist. Now, as always, there's always clues in the word. Twist means that we're going to tell the guy who's going first first. So the twist means starts with a T. That means tackle's going first. And when the tackle goes first, we're going to typically call this so you're pretty close to the opposite A gap that you're getting to. But in twist and nut, which is the other one, we're going to get in both A gaps. Now the tackle's goal on this is to cross the center's face as fast as possible and to take him with them. It's illegal to grab his jersey, but it's well advised to do it. My recommendation would be to grab his jersey, take 2 steps, and then let go. Those 2 steps will pull him there and pull him out of place. And one of the purposes of that is this guard is probably not going to condense down when the center slides, so we're naturally going to create the gap that the nose is going to go through. Now the nose, on the other hand, has a chance to loop and get a sack on this, but what's really important is that he needs to take 1 step, get both hands on this guard that he's on, and then he'll loop. We have a little bit of time because this is a pass down, and we're not necessarily worried about gap control as much because we would be in trouble if we called this on a run game and they happen to run zone or something like that. But when we call these as pass stunts, that's the important part. Now, nut is the exact same thing, but backwards, meaning that because the end goes first, the nose will go first. Same thing. Nose, I want you to pull him across. I want you to collect 2 linemen and then create the gap that the tackle's going to go through. Now, the next 2 are nitro and TNT. These are ones that we use primarily on pass downs, but they're also really good against option teams. And so what we like to do on this is if we have a quarterback that we feel is fairly mobile, this basically releases the nose and tackle to go chase him, but keeps the end and the bandit in their same pass rush that they were in, which will put them in a contained spot. So if we are to flush this guy out, he should run straight into our end or bandit, but also not create unreasonably large gaps in the middle for this quarterback to escape through. So like we mentioned, we're shooting through the gaps. This is a situation where the D-line needs to know if it's a pass down or a run down. If we're facing an option team, they need to get through and push flat. If it's 3rd and 15, they need to push through and chase the quarterback and get after him. This is something we also like to call if we know a team's going to sprint out a lot and they're always going to sprint out to the field, we'll automatically call nitro to give the nose and the tackle a head up on them. Now TNT is the same thing. It's a double slant towards the tackle, and exact same thing as nitro, just in reverse. A lot of times we'll do this if we feel we have a slide team and we know they're going to slide to or away from tight end or to the running back, away from the tight end or away from the running back. We'll call this a lot of times to get in their back hip pocket. So the last of the pass rush stunts, one of the ones that we have that are unique to the DNs is what we call wide, and it is exactly like it sounds like. Our DNs will widen out a yard outside the offensive tackles. Now this is pretty rough against a tight end, but it is something that we can do, although we can call wide strong and wide weak if we feel like we have a scrambler that we need to contain. Sometimes teams are really predictable on sprint outs, like 3rd and long, they're going to call sprint out flood. This allows us to get on the edge and contain the quarterback and keep him from his launch point. Basically, it's this. You're working 3 fields upfield, and then when that tackle gets ready to punch, you are going to slap his hands off of his body. The goal is to take them off. There's very few offensive linemen in high school that can have their hands knocked down and then recover from it, so that is our ultimate goal. Now, the next set of stunts are tackle and end stunts. So we've got techs. This is where the D tackle or the interior guy goes first. We can call this strong or weak or double. So what I've got drawn up here is 22 double techs. Same thing. The tackle is going to go through the B gap, and his goal is to grab this guard and take him with him. Now the end, again, we should be athletic here. So the end's going to step, get hands on, and then loop inside. Now, we don't like calling this versus a tight end because this is a really long path, but occasionally we will if we feel like we have somebody we can pick on. Sometimes teams will, if they have a bad guard, try to put the tight end to that bad guard during pass protection so that guard just has to fan him out. It's a little bit easier job. This allows us to then find that guy and pick on him. Now, east, same thing, except in reverse. We don't call this as often. Sometimes it's a weird contain that we can do if we've got athletic tackles, but same thing. The end is going to cross the face and try to grab this tackle as he goes by, and then the nose is going to loop. This is also really good if we want to blitz into your A-gap to then create some problems here that, again, if we sent 2 A-gap guys, they're 5-on-6, but they won't necessarily know how to pick this up, and it's very difficult for them to pick up. Or if we know that they're going to slide, we'll sometimes run a twist away from or towards the back side of the slide and blitz this A gap, because that's really tough for them to pick up all three guys if they're sliding away from it.